If you have your Bibles, if you'll turn to 1 Kings chapter 18. You know those times when a pastor preaches a message and we think, I wish so-and-so were here. I wish so-and-so were here to hear that message, because that message was definitely for them. And then there's those times when we're listening to a sermon and we begin to wonder how the pastor knows so much about our lives, because that specific sermon seems to be all about us and what we're going through. You know those times when sermon's preached and we think, man, so-and-so should have been here for that, because that sermon was directly for them. Or we start thinking, I don't know why he's been stalking me all week, but that sermon was directly for me. So I want to remove all doubt this morning. The title of this message will help everyone understand who it's intended for. I want you to know who I'm preaching to today. So I'm just helping you out in advance. You don't have to wonder, man, this one was for so-and-so, or I wonder if he's preaching to me. There's no more question. I titled the message so everybody could get that one off their plate right away. We can know right away, all right, this one's meant for me. I want to go to 1 Kings chapter 18 this morning and look at one of my favorite stories in the Bible. I absolutely love this story. King Ahab has been trying to get rid of Elijah. Elijah is a prophet of God. King Ahab is one of the most wicked kings Israel has ever had. They don't play well together. Ahab wants Elijah gone. Elijah has decreed that there would be a 3.5-year drought that would happen, and it had happened. That 3.5-year drought has been going on. Now Ahab would like to have Elijah off the scene. He does not want him around anymore. And Elijah's ready to go head to head with him. So he goes to Ahab. This is the where we start reading this morning. This is where that confrontation happens. This is where Elijah goes up to Ahab, and this is where the battle begins. So look at verse 17 with me of 1 Kings chapter 18. Then it happened when Ahab saw Elijah that Ahab said to him, "Is that you, O troubler of Israel?" And he answered, "I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, in that you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord and have followed the Baals. Now therefore send and gather all Israel to me on Mount Carmel, in the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." Ahab comes up to Elijah and says, "Hey, it's you, the troublemaker." Now, why? There seems to be a little bit of prophetic immunity in the Bible, because look at how the prophets answer these wicked kings. Look at what these prophets do. I mean, Nathan went up to David, who was not a wicked king, but David was guilty of adultery with Bathsheba. And Nathan goes, "Yeah, you're the guy. You're the guy causing the problem." And a prophet goes up to the king, and like with no fear, they just accuse the king of doing wrong. It's like they have prophetic immunity. Like, what gives you the idea you think you can go to a king and declare that they're in the wrong? But these prophets do this. Elijah goes up to Ahab. Ahab says, "Oh, it's the troublemaker." And he goes, "Oh, see, I'm not the troublemaker. I'm not the one causing trouble. It's you and your dad. You are the ones that are causing trouble for Israel." Ahab accuses him of causing trouble, and Elijah just spins it around to tell the truth. "No, it's not me. I'm not the problem. It's you. You're the problem." Ahab's decision to walk away from God was why Israel had been affected in such a negative way for so long. The reason why the drought was there was because of the influence that Ahab had to turn Israel away from God. Elijah wants to see the drought come to an end. I mean, he's probably suffering with thirst just like everybody else. He wants to see the drought come to an end, but he also wants to see the people of Israel see that God was the choice that they should have been making the whole time. You've been making the wrong choice, and you need to see that God is on the throne. That you want to know who God is? He's the guy. There's only one. There's only one God. And they had been worshiping Baal. That's the god, the false god that they had been worshiping. So he tells Ahab, "Bring everybody to Mount Carmel. Bring everybody there. I have a point that I need to make. I want to make a point." He has a sermon to preach, and it consists of one question. One question sermon. And Elijah wants everybody to know what it is. Look at verse 20. "So Ahab sent for all the children of Israel and gathered the prophets together on Mount Carmel. And Elijah came to all the people and said, "How long will you falter between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him." But the people answered him not a word. Elijah just asked one powerful question. Who is the final authority in your life? Who's your final authority? If it's God, then go all in, follow him. And if it's Baal, if Baal is who you choose to worship, make your decision. Now Elijah's not saying Baal's an option, so if you want to follow Baal, go ahead and follow Baal. That's not the message he's trying to give. What he's saying is, if God is God, then you follow God. But you guys are on the fence here of which way to go. You don't know which God you want to follow. So how long are you going to falter between two opinions? Follow the true God. If Baal is the true God, then we should be following him. But if God's the true God, we should be following him. You don't sit on the fence. And Elijah is very clear that God is the true God. He even gives them the answer, which is really nice when you get a test. When the professor gives you the answer to the test, that's a good gift. Elijah's doing this. Hey, by the way, if God's God, follow him. If Baal's God, follow him. And by the way, Baal's not God, so follow God. Follow God. If God's God, follow him. That's the message that Elijah's preaching. And it's a very pointed message. And still today, we need to hear that question. Why do we falter? Why, me and you? By the way, just if you didn't notice, I'm preaching to you. So everything I say this morning, take it personally. Why do we falter? We trust God one day, but we worry about the outcome the next day. Don't we do that? Hey, God's on the throne. He's in complete control. I believe with him. I believe in him with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. I love him. I know I can rest in him. He's going to make everything okay. Flip the page to the next day. Oh, Lord, how is this going to work out? How in the world am I going to make it through this? Well, if God's God, follow him. Follow him. We have times when we're on fire for God, but then we still end up in a rut the next day. I'm on fire for God. I want to serve him with everything I've got. Turn the page. I forgot about God. I've been doing everything, and I haven't been consulting him. I haven't been talking to God about anything. It's been so long since I've talked to God, and I don't feel worthy to talk to God because of the decisions I've made. And well, what about the fact that you were on fire one day and now you're in a rut on the next day? This is a good question. His statement is strong. If God's God, follow him. Why do you stand on the fence? Why do you say, I'm on fire for God today, and then the next day is like, yeah, God, I'm not even sure this is going to work out. Why do we falter? Why? And it's a good question even for us. Why do we falter? Elijah makes this statement. God is God. So follow God. And then he decides to give all of Israel a visual aid. And this is where the story gets really entertaining for me. I really do love this story. Look at verse 22 of 1 Kings 18. Then Elijah said to the people, I alone am left a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Therefore let them give us 2 bulls, and let them choose 1 bull for themselves, cut it in pieces, and lay it on the wood, but put no fire under it. And I will prepare the other bull, and lay it on the wood, and put no fire under it. Then you call on the name of your gods, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God. So all the people answered and said, it is well spoken. Now I want to point out right here again, Elijah is outnumbered. A lot. It's not like those 2 guys are against him. No, it's 450 prophets of Baal against 1 guy. And he says, I alone am left a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. I'm way outnumbered. Elijah's gotten himself into a little bit of a pickle. He's the one that made the challenge. I challenge all of you. Okay, good for you. You're looking for trouble? You just found it. You've got the whole nation of Israel up there. You've got your 450 prophets of Baal, and you got the king that wants you dead. Great audience. Good job. You ready to take them on? Let's do this. Let's take this on. He's challenged the prophets of Baal to set up an altar for their gods, and he would repair the altar that they had tore down. They've torn this altar down that was for God. Elijah's plan is, I'm going to repair that altar and I'm going to make a sacrifice to my God. You make a sacrifice to your God on the other altar. The God who sends down fire from heaven will have proven that he is the one true God. Don't light the fire, let your God light the fire. Whichever God can do this, that's the true God. What turns this scene from a dangerous situation to a safe situation, remember, he's really outnumbered here. What turns it from a dangerous situation to a safe situation is the fact that the people agree that this is a good test. The people say, it is well spoken. All they want is the truth. We've been faltering between these two opinions. Is God God or is Baal God? Which one are we going to do? We're on the fence here. All we want is the truth. The prophets of Baal could have just killed Elijah right then. They could have done it. Remember, there's 450 guys against one. They had what it took. Even if they're terrible fighters, they could do this. They can take Elijah down. But that would have given the message that Baal wasn't up to the challenge. Because Elijah just made this challenge. And they would have proven themselves to be phony. Because Elijah says, I just want to make a challenge. Whichever God can light the fire, that's the true God. If they would have said, let's just kill him, the message would have been put out there, oh, so Baal can't handle it? Baal's not up to that challenge? Now that the people have agreed, there's no option here. The nation says, let's do what he said. Let's move forward with the competition. Let's do this. So the prophets of Baal have no option. The competition must go on. Let the games begin. I really am entertained by this passage of Scripture. Elijah says, let's play a game. Let's play a game. Let's set up a competition, and the real God will be able to do it, and the false God will not. Let's play. And all the people said, let's do that. Let's do that. Look at verse 25. Now Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one bull for yourselves and prepare it first, for you are many, and call on the name of your God, but put no fire under it. So they took the bull which was given them, and they prepared it, and called on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, O Baal, hear us. But there was no voice, no one answered. Then they leaped about the altar which they had made. For hours the prophets of Baal pleaded with their God to send fire. Baal, send the fire. Prove that you're the real God. But there was no answer. From morning till noon, they are pleading with their God. Please send a spark. Just start something. Just send us a fire, God. Send us a fire. But because he's not a real God, he couldn't do anything. There's nothing he could do. The people of Israel were waiting to see something happen. We are on the fence. We want to know who the true God is. We're on the fence here. We want to see something happen. They're willing to accept the answer as true. Just let there be an answer. They just want to know which one it is. Is Baal really God? Or is Jehovah really God? Which God's real? Because we want to follow that God. Then Elijah decides to bring a little bit of entertainment to the whole situation. From morning till noon, these guys have been trying to get Baal to answer them. So Elijah chooses to help. I love people that love to help. They're already starting to feel defeated. So Elijah decides to speak up. Insult, meet injury. Elijah decides, I'm just going to help out the situation just a little bit. Look at verse 27. And so it was at noon that Elijah mocked them, saying, and said, cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is meditating, or he is busy, or he's on a journey, or perhaps he's sleeping and must be awakened. Okay, I'm just going to say, that's not helping. I do love the person of Elijah. He decides to help out. It's been hours, guys. He's not, you know what? I think I know the problem. I know the problem. He's a god. Maybe he's meditating, or he's busy. Maybe he's on a journey. He could be sleeping. Shout a little louder. He could be sleeping. Just do everything you can. And even though it seems like Elijah's just being sarcastic, it's not just that. It's not, and I do like his sarcasm. I do like, it does say that he's mocking them. So we can't even Elijah wouldn't mock him. No, God said he did. Yeah, he's mocking them. Okay? He is mocking these prophets of Baal. Which, by the way, you're already outnumbered. Why not? Let's mock them now. That'll make everything better. What we have here is an example of biblical trash talking. And he's not just being sarcastic, even though he is being sarcastic. For the sake of the people, he's actually giving them every possible opportunity to get their God's attention. It's not working, then try everything. For the people's sake, they need to know you have done everything you could to get your God's attention, because they're faltering between two opinions and they want to know which one's the truth. So try everything. Maybe he's sleeping and you should shout louder. He could be on a journey. Shout louder. Get your God's attention. Do everything you can to get your God's attention, because these people want to know what the truth is. So let's leave no stone unturned. Make sure you do everything you can to get his attention. They won't have any excuses because they tried everything. And the prophets of Baal take the bait. He's right. We got to try everything, because if his God's able to light the fire, then nobody's following ours. So we've got to try everything. And they take the bait. Look at verse 28. So they cried aloud and cut themselves, as was their custom, with knives and lances, until the blood gushed out on them. And when midday was past, they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice. But there was no voice, no one answered, no one paid attention. We still have no answer from God. Baal is not answering. After Elijah encouraged them to cry louder, they decided to go all in. Let's not only cry louder, they even started cutting their own bodies to show their dedication and their sincerity to their God. But nothing happens. Nothing happens. From morning till evening, Elijah let them have the floor. And now it's his turn. He said, okay, it's your turn. Baal was not able to do this. Now let's see your God fall on his face too. Our God wasn't able to do it. Now let's see you do it. The nation of Israel had been waiting for the results all day long. 450 prophets have done everything that they could to get the attention of their God, and they have failed. Now one man is going to represent the one true God. That's our picture. The 450 prophets of Baal stepped to the side, wounded, exhausted. Probably you can't even hear them because they've been crying all day long. Their voices, their throats are raw, their bodies are bleeding, and they sit down defeated. Say, it's your turn. And one man stands up to represent one true God. Look at verse 30. Then Elijah said to all the people, come near to me. So all the people came near to him. And he prepared the altar of the Lord that was broken down. And Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, Israel shall be your name. Then with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he made a trench around the altar large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. Elijah calls everyone together, and he's going to reveal the one true God. But this time, he's increasing the difficulty. He not only repairs the altar, he digs a trench around the altar. Well, this wasn't part of the rules. This wasn't in the description of the competition. Why are you digging a trench around the altar? For the prophets of Baal, he did everything he could to help them with their cause. He even mocked them. He went all out. Louder. Maybe he didn't. He just can't hear you. I don't know how many things that Elijah said to mock them, but I'm sure he was on a roll. He could be a really old God. You have to talk louder. Maybe he's on a journey. Maybe he's sleeping. He could be busy doing something else. Just get his attention somehow. He's helping every way he can. But for himself, he seems to be going backwards. For his God to answer, he's digging a trench around the altar too. Look at what he does with the trench. Verse 33. And he put the wood in order, cut the bull in pieces, and laid it on the wood, and said, fill 4 water pots with water, and pour it on the burnt sacrifice and on the wood. Then he said, do it a second time. And they did it a second time. And he said, do it a third time. And they did it a third time. So the water ran all around the altar, and he also filled the trench with water. Apparently Elijah had no expertise in campfires. 0. This is not how it's done. We're going to light this thing on fire. Let's saturate it. Let's soak it first. Not your typical Boy Scout. Elijah doesn't seem to know how to do this. He is taking his success rate way down here. He's just one man against 450 prophets of Baal. These prophets are most likely cranky prophets at this point. They're wounded, they're tired, and they have produced 0 results all day long. Now he's going to ask his God to light the altar on fire. But first, he saturates everything. Not only is the sacrifice soaked, the wood is soaked, the altar is soaked, but it is now sitting in a puddle. He saturates everything. The situation was already dismal, and now Elijah is allowing it to get worse. And in the next verse, we see that God was actually the one allowing it to get worse. Elijah just didn't come up with this idea on his own. He was following the Lord on this. God, I'm going to ask you to send fire down to toast everything. Like, pour water on it first. Okay, we're going to pour water on it first, guys. Okay, that makes sense. Let's soak this thing. God has placed one man in the middle of an impossible situation and is asking him for complete obedience and trust. Will you trust me? It's just 1 against 450, God. Will you trust me? Yeah, I'll trust you. Soak it. That makes sense? Soak it. Yeah. What kind of fluid would you like me to soak it with? Gasoline? Charcoal lighter? What do you want? Water. Soak it. Soak it. Look at verse 36. And it came to pass, at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that Elijah the prophet came near and said, Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, and I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Hear me, O Lord, hear me, that this people may know that you are the Lord God, and that you have turned their hearts back to you again. One man is surrounded by a worldly audience. These people are not in favor of God. He's outnumbered. Their opinions differ drastically. All eyes are on him. And then he prays. And I want you to hear the heart of his prayer. The verse that we just had on the screen. Listen to the heart of this prayer. Let it be known that you are God, and I am your servant. I have been obedient to you, that this people may know that you are the Lord. That's his prayer. I really want it to be known that you are God. And me, I'm just your servant. I am just being obedient to you, that they may know that you are the Lord. What an amazing prayer. God, I just want them to know it's all of you, and that you're using me. But let them know that it's you. You're the true God. That's when God says, let's light this place up. Let's consume it all. Let's light it up. Look at verse 38. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt sacrifice and the wood and the stones and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they said, the Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God. An entire nation was just made aware of the truth through the obedience of one man. One man. And suddenly, the odds change. Remember, at the beginning of the story, it's 1 against 450. It was 450 to 1, and now it is 1 nation to 450. Everything just tipped. Everything just changed. Look at verse 40. Then Elijah said to them, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Do not let one of them escape." So they seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and executed them there. Elijah no longer stands alone. Through the beginning of the story, it was 1 to 450 prophets of Baal. The whole nation just had their eyes open to who the true God is. The whole nation just saw it. And it wasn't because there was a large group of people to follow. One guy stood and did what he was able to do. One. This story is amazing to me. It's not that God says, "I'm going to send my army against your army." And it says, "I'm going to send my man against your army." I'm going to send one guy in, just one, against 450 prophets of Baal. And when he asks me to set that altar on fire, he says the sacrifice, burn the sacrifice. I'm going to go way above and way beyond and show you that there's no denying the fact that I am God. But he doesn't send an army in to do it. He sends one guy in to do it. One guy did what he was able to do. His heart was in the right place, even though it appeared he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. You put any of us in that situation, like, yeah, I'm not supposed to be here. 450 to 1, yep, I'm in the wrong place. I'm out. But this guy stands up and does what he's able to do. The odds were against him, but God was for him. Elijah knew that his life, if it is led by obedience to God, if I have a life of obedience to God, God will always approve of that and support that. I just need to obey. I just need to obey. What if it sounds crazy? Just obey. God will support that. Even if it sounds crazy, God will support that. His position was the same as Paul the Apostle's position. If you look in the New Testament, look at Romans 8:31. What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who could be against us? How can we lose? If God's in favor of what we're doing and he's supporting what we're doing, can anybody stop him? If God's for us, who could be against us? Same heart that Elijah had. Yeah, it's 1 against 450, but it's a really big 1 against 450. And if God supports what I'm doing, if my obedience, what could be against me? How can I lose? How can I lose? So let me explain why I needed to preach this sermon to you specifically. Now let's get back to the beginning here. I'm preaching to you. I'm not preaching to the person next to you. I'm preaching to you. This one's meant to be personal. And everybody take it personally. I'm not preaching to the person next to you. I'm preaching to you. Which, by the way, includes all of us. But I'm preaching to you this morning. I had to preach this sermon to you since there was no one else it could apply to in the way that it applies to you. I can't apply it to anybody the way it applies to you. So I have to preach this sermon to you. You're the only one on this planet who can fulfill the role that you fill. You're it. So you have to take this one personally. There's nobody else to preach it to. It's you. You're the only person who has been shaped by your blessings and your struggles. You're it. Nobody else. Nobody else. You're it. You're the only person with your personality and your history. Can't preach to anybody else. It's got to be you. You're the only person God has his eye on for the purpose he has for you. So I can't, this sermon wasn't designed to preach to somebody else. It was designed to preach to you because you're the only one that fits the mold. You're it. Nobody else became who you are through your struggles. You're it. Somebody else might have gone through struggles similar to yours, but they didn't become who you are through your struggles. You're the only person God pass for the purpose He has given you. You're it. This idea is almost overwhelming. You have significance. You are specific. You're not just in a group of people. You're the only one. You're it. Many times you hear, well, if you don't do it, God will send somebody else. Not for your purpose. Not for what you are. The personality that you have. What He has allowed you to go through to become who you are. Nobody else got that. You're the only one that got that. And God can use you for this season. For this purpose. Nobody else can do it. So I'm preaching to you. You. There's nobody else I can preach to. It's got to be you. How is it that the God of all creation is interested in you as a person? David was amazed by this idea also. I've looked at everything you made, God. Everything. You are a big God. To this day, we don't know where the universe ends or where it begins. How high does it go? How low does it go? We don't know. We've got a big God. My kids ask me, why did God make something so big that we may never even know what's out there? It's evidence He's really big. We have an amazing God. Look at what David says in Psalms 8 and verse 3. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have ordained, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you visit him? Why in the world? Look at all the beauty you made, the majestic universe that you made. You're interested in me? Well, how is that? How is that even possible, God? How is that even possible? How is it that God can look past all of His amazing creation and find the most value in you? Take it personally. That's meant to be personal. You were worth dying for. You. Not just the whole world. It's made of a bunch of yous. Specific gift. The eternal life was specifically made for you and anybody else who would come into it, but for you. You were worth the pain and the suffering that Jesus went through. He saw you and He said, it'll be worth it to have them. It'll be worth it. Everything He endured was worth it just to be with you. Mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. When I look at all the wonders of your creation, God, how is it even possible that you're mindful of me? You didn't die for the universe. You died for me. I was valuable enough to you to go through what you did. How is it that you're mindful of me? Not only are you the only one who has been shaped by your past and has your personality, you're also the only one that stands in your shoes. You're it. You're it. You're the one that God's placed in your family. You're the one that God has placed in your place of employment or in the school that you're in. Not only are you specific because of who you are and what has made you into the person that you are, you're also that person in that situation. It has to be preached to you. No, I can't preach it to anybody else. You're the only one in that role. You're the only one that God allowed to cross the paths of the people that you meet specifically. You specifically. You're the person He's chosen to influence those around you for the glory of God. And it took you. Not somebody else. It's you. It's you. Your experiences have altered the conversations that you are able to have with people that somebody else might not be able to have because they don't understand where you are because of what you've been through. It's specific. It's you. Does everybody understand how special you are and how important it is for us to live for God, because there's nobody else that can do what God can do through you. It takes you, specifically you. Elijah was alone when the story began. But by the end, he was able to stand with the nation of Israel and destroy the prophets of Baal. Started with one, ended up with a nation. One man was able to be used to turn a nation back to God. Andrew Jackson made a quote that I love this quote. One man with courage makes a majority. One man with courage makes a majority. Isn't it still just one guy? No. One person who has the courage to take a stand and do what's right will have a following of people behind him. I will stand with that man. One person standing up and doing what is right. Other people will trickle in behind him. One man with the courage makes a majority. When people meet a person with courage to stand for God, it changes the heart of the people. I'll stand with them. It might be scary, it might be rough, but I'll stand with them. I'm going that way. I'm doing that. The question is now, what are you going to do with the opportunity that God has created you for? Because nobody else. Oh, somebody else. Nobody else can do what he has created you to do with him. It's a team thing. It's not all of God and none of me. No, it's God with you. Emmanuel means God with us, not God instead of us, and not us without him. It's God with us. With us. I'm going to do it with you. Can you choose somebody else? I didn't build somebody else for this. Your past, your struggles, your successes, your history have developed who you are, and you're the person God needs for what he's going to do next. I'm preaching to you. To you. There was a time, just like today, when God was looking for someone he could use. He was looking for one person who was willing to do what no one else was doing. He needed one person who would surrender to be used for what he was created to be used for. Isaiah was that man. And he responded to he answered the call. Look at Isaiah chapter 6 and verse 8. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send and who will go for us? Then I said, here am I, send me. You're willing to be all in? Yeah, send me. You know it could get crazy. Who else can fill the role better than me? You created me with my history, my situations, my struggles, my successes, everything made me who I am. And if I'm the guy you need, God, here I am. Send me. Send me. Today is the day that every event of your life is led up to. And yes, I'm preaching to you. I'm preaching to you. I'm completely convinced that there's a lot of power in one. A lot of power in one. One person. God uses those who make themselves available to him. He got them all in. Oh, we're going to get a lot done. Oh, my goodness, we can turn the world upside down if you're all in. Are you all in? And God's power radiates from their availability. Look what Elijah did. Yeah, but that was Elijah. He was a prophet of God. That was Old Testament. God didn't know. No, even the New Testament tells us that they were of like passions as we are. You cut them, they bleed. These are people. These are just people with availability. Will you make yourself available to God? That's just the question. And you can't say, well, I wonder who he's talking to. There you go. I'm preaching to you. I'm preaching to you. Will you make yourself available to God? On May 22nd, 2016, we opened the doors of Renew Church for the first time. Day one, May 22nd. As you leave that door out there, just turn around and look at the wall. There it is, the plaque. May 22nd, 2016, we opened our doors. At that time, I was working a full-time job from 40 to 65 hours a week. Typically, it was 65 hours a week. 40 hours a week, I thought I lost my job because I'm hardly ever there. You know, I was there a long time every week. And we started a church during that time with 11 people. We had 11 of us. After that first Sunday, a coworker of mine came up to me and asked me a question that I will never forget. He asked me, first of all, he asked me how things went on that Sunday. How many people showed up to your church? He's never been here. He really didn't think it was ever going to take off. So he said, hey, how did church go Sunday number 1? How'd it go? I said, we had 11 people. Ooh. 11 people. Good for you. Then he asked me a question, the question I'll never forget. How do you plan on growing a church while working a full-time job? 40 to 65 hours a week. How do you plan on getting that done? And my answer was then and is still today, God will use the availability of His people. I meet people every week that I've never met before. And it's not because I found them. It's because you continue to bring them in. And I get to make another friend. Our church is growing not because of something that I'm doing. It's something that God is doing through every single individual in this church. It takes you, specifically you. You're not just a person in a crowd of people. I really wish you could hear this from my heart, not just from my mouth. You are not just one person in a crowd of people this morning. You're a specific person with a unique construction who God has placed here. And I thank God for that move. Thank you for bringing them, because they can do what nobody else can do. If they are available to you, God, they can do so much that I can't even do. I'm able to do things you're not able to do because you don't have my history. You don't have the struggles I've been through. You don't see things the way I see them, but I don't see things the way you do either, because I haven't gone through what you've gone through. God has designed me specifically. He's designed you specifically. You are vital to the family of God. And if you have any questions, I'm preaching to you. You. We need you. We really, really, really need you to be available to Him. Because there are people out there that we will never meet if you are not available to God. It takes you. We are what we are because of what God does through us. Our church is what it is because of what God has been able to accomplish through the people of this church. Look at Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 10. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. By the way, this verse is about you. He created you. You were designed. You are His workmanship. You are a specific creation. Not, oh yeah, aren't we all? Yeah, but specifically, you are custom made for what God can do in your life. One person in obedience to God can turn a nation back to God. We'll look at our nation right now and say, hey God, we need a lot of help. Well, can I have one? Can I have one? Completely sold out and available. Because I can do a lot with one. Do a whole lot with one. Can I have two? How about three? Can I have one church full of people who are available to me, will obey even when it gets crazy? You'll just stay true and obey. You remain faithful. Can I have one church like that? Because if I can get one, I can do so much. There's a lot of power in one. I want to close with Elijah's prayer, but I also want it to be your prayer and my prayer also. I want it to be our prayer. I love Renew Church. I love this church. I love the people. And I don't have to. I just do. I just do. And I also know that I am loved by the people. God has put an amazing group of people together, but He did it based on He built it with individuals. You're not just one big group, just a group. You're a bunch of individuals that God designed specifically for what He wants to do in your life. I'm preaching to you. Don't look at the person next to you. And I'm not preaching to the person next to you. I'm preaching to you. Just you. Look at Elijah's prayer one more time. And may it be our prayer also. Verse 36. Let it be known this day that you are God. I am your servant. I have done all these things at your word, that this people may know that you are the Lord God. Stand with me this morning.